Hi, welcome to this AQA A-Level Business revision video looking at 3.4.5, Managing Inventory and Supply Chains. In today's video, we're going to be covering how we can look at... Hi, welcome to this AQA A-Level Business revision video looking at 3.4.5, Managing Inventory and Supply Chains. In today's video, we're going to be looking at how we can control our supply to meet demand. We're going to be looking at inventory control charts, which I know is a bit of a sticking point for people, and then how we choose suppliers. A quick reminder that my teaching here is separate to my teaching and consultation roles at any and all schools and academies throughout the country. My name is Mr. Giles. Let's get down to business. So let's look at the concept of matching our supply to our demand. And here we're looking at managing our inventory essentially. Now remember, inventory is all the stock that we have, goods and services that we can actually offer at that moment in time. And every business is going to have periods where demand, i.e. the amount of people who want their products, might suddenly outweigh the actual supply they can provide. It's very common. The external environment is unpredictable for a reason, and more on that in year 13. But the first choice we have is this concept of outsourcing. If we use toys as the example here, it's a really good example. It may well be that toys suddenly have a bit of a resurgence at certain points in the year. So, for example, let's say at Christmas, they probably sell more toys than they do at any other period of time. Now, it may well be that we get the latest Marvel film come out, and the Captain America toy figure is all the rage for maybe 2 or 3 months in the middle of the year. Usually, the big blockbusters come out in summer, right? So then that takes you to sort of like September time, and then demand kind of dies off. No one's spending money in November, but then suddenly in December, there's a massive uptick in sales for that toy, and we weren't ready for that because we kind of down regulated our supply of it because we thought that the hype was over. And this is going to be really tricky because how do we meet that supply? Well, we can use the concept of outsourcing. So what outsourcing actually is when you ask another business to do the doing for you. Now, you don't have to outsource just your production, but because we're in this unit, in the operations unit, we'll just talk about production. Essentially, what you do is you ask a business which is far bigger than you to utilize their resources to make your products for you. And this is a really popular way of businesses meeting supply and demand. I pick on Marvel and Captain America because that's exactly what they do. Marvel are very good at making, well, I don't know, very good, folks. They're good at making films. I'll leave that up to your discretion. But what they're not good at is they're not good at making toys. That's not their job. They don't want to own factories. That's another thing they've got to manage and maintain. And it just kind of, takes their business away from their core competencies of films and comics. So what they do is they ask big toy manufacturers like Hasbro and Mattel to make their toys on their behalf. Now, sometimes that's in the form of a licensing agreement. So that arrangement will be made long before the films ever produce, and Hasbro and Mattel will make products on behalf of them. Or it could just be outsourcing. It could just be, hey, look, we want to order 1 billion toys from you. Here's our order. Could you make them for us? And Hasbro and Mattel, who have the facilities, they have the resources, they have the machinery, etc., will take that order on board. Now, the only problem with that is if you're asking somebody else to make your products for you, you cannot confirm the quality. So you're putting your reputation in the hand of somewhere else. And you are going to lose out on some of the profits because you are essentially buying those products from somebody else and then adding your little bit on top. Whereas if you made them yourself, you'd be able to make all the profit. But again, if you can't match your supply to the demand, it may well be a necessary evil. So suddenly, if you get this big kind of influx of demand, you might not be able to meet that demand. So you go to one of your competitors, maybe, or just a producer in that field, and say, "Hey, can we use some of your capacity?" Now, if we link that back to our previous discussions around capacity, if you're watching these videos in like kind of chronological order, you'll notice that I skipped over capacity in one of the videos. It's because I wanted to get to this point here. If you have poor capacity utilization, let's say go back to the video that I did before, it was 70%. You could increase your capacity utilization by producing products for other people. Now, folks, I don't want to break your hearts here, but if you've ever shopped in places like Aldi, Lidl, or you've bought own brand food, and I'm going to use cereal, if you've ever bought own brand cornflakes from Sainsbury's, they're made by Kellogg's in the same factory, except for Kellogg's whack a crazy logo on their box and charge you £2 more. It's the same factory. Why do they look the same? Why do they taste the same? It's no different to lots of other things. And it's because Kellogg's want to reach maximum capacity utilization, so they offer to make those products on behalf of Sainsbury's, outsourcing. So that's our first way of doing it. The next thing we can do is if we've got a service, for example, or we've got the capacity, we just don't have the people, is we can offer 0 hours contracts. Now, this is really not uncommon at all. A little bit of advice for young people, if you're watching this, a really cool job for people your age is go to your local stadiums and this, that, and the other and find out who the stewards are because they offer 0 hours contracts. I've taught quite a few I've taught quite a few young people who have been able to stand there and watch their favourite football team with a high vis jacket on, being a quote unquote steward, and they get offered a job every weekend and they can choose to take it or not, those 0 hours contracts. So you can be a part of that and you win because you get to work when you want to work. But the 0 hours works for the business because they'll have an abundance of people who might want to work, who they can offer work to, and will take up that work. But there's no need to pay those people all the time because there's not a football match every weekend. So you offer those 0 hour contracts and you're able to meet supply and demand as it ebbs and flows. And then lastly, just producing to order, that good old fashioned just in time. I'm not going to explore that here, that's in a previous video, but just only producing to order. You have an increase in lead time. Sure, that's life, but at least you're able to meet demand. I'll give you a quick anecdotal story for this. I wanted to buy my daughter a bit of a family heirloom. I wanted to buy her a signet ring. So I found a really good place that makes signet rings over in Ireland. And I said to him, hey, what's the lead time? He said, right now it's about 4 months. Okay, that was in January. I'm recording this in August. I still don't have a ring. Okay, and I've messaged him a few times going, hey, bro, what's going on with my ring? So I'm either being scammed or he's like, yeah, I'm really sorry, mate, but suddenly demand skyrocketed. So, you join the queue a little bit late, you're going to have to wait your turn. Now, what am I going to do? If I want something high quality, I'm going to have to wait, aren't I? Okay. So that's fine. Like, if I was trying to buy a pack of cornflakes, it'd be a bit different. But because it's a high quality item, I'm happy to wait. So there's our 3 ways of meeting our supply with our demand. So what about choice of suppliers then? Well, this one's pretty straightforward, but there are some bigger implications. The first thing to consider when you're choosing a supplier is the price. Now, generally speaking, the higher the price of the supplier, probably the more better quality it is. So these two kind of go hand in hand. However, if you are an economist, you might know the concept of a monopsony. So it may well be that your choice of suppliers is very limited. Maybe there's only one supplier, monopsony, right? There's only one supplier, and you just have to accept the price. So at that point, it's not really a choice. However, if there are multiple suppliers, you might have to choose a supplier that's within your budget. I was very fortunate when I was younger to work in a few different kitchens, like cooking, and we used to use Breaks, which you might have seen turn up at your school perhaps, so Breaks Bros. Their food, folks, when I used to use it, was not great, and there are some other ones that are floating around now. I can't remember the name of the ones we use now in schools, but there are other various quality ones. But I can tell you now that Break Bros was really cheap, and that's why the kitchens I worked in use it. So that could be a real implication because the lower you can keep your raw material costs, the more profit you can make. Quality, it goes without saying, if you're a high quality product, so if I can talk about food, if you're, Mayfair selling 500 quid steaks, you can't be using cheap food. You've got to be using the good old Aberdeen Angus bing bang bong stuff. Flexibility. If you're trying to run just in time, you're going to need a supplier that's going to run that with you, that is willing to make deliveries every kind of 3 hours or every day or wherever it is that you need it. You're going to need your suppliers to be flexible, and maybe you want to chop and change your orders. Maybe your order isn't the same every time. You're going to need a supplier that be able to ebb and flow with you. This is where it gets really cheeky. Lead time. Depending on how close you are, the proximity that you are to your supplier might impact on the lead time. And there's a really interesting story that happened. I want to say it's about 4 years ago now. But there's a big canal that runs through the middle of the world. I think it's called the Suez Canal. And it got blocked up by one of the container ships. It went a bit skew with. And that stopped containers running for like days. And that basically took a massive knock on the economy because loads of people were waiting for products to come. But if your supplier has got a different way of getting products to you, you wasn't affected, and that kind of turned the tables in a lot of economies over here in the West. So that lead time is super important. How is your producer, so how is your supplier getting your products to you? Do they have a quick lead time, a slow lead time? Because that might impact on your ability to kind of ebb and flow with your demand. And then lastly, reputation. And I'm going to link all of these together with reputation, because there's no point buying a really expensive piece of supply if the reputation of that supplier is not good. Okay. Now, the reason I pick on this last is because it actually is probably the biggest consideration, but one that's probably not reported on in the news until it's too late. Now, we're all aware of the fact that unfortunately sweatshops still exist in places in the world, and the brands that you might consider to be good quality brands often use those. And it's not until something bad happens that you then find out about them, and then you're like, oh, well, I didn't think this. I'll give you a couple of harrowing news stories. So a bit of a trigger warning, folks. This is a bit grim. I want to say in 2017 there was a sweatshop in Bangladesh somewhere that went up in flames because, there's machines and this and the other, and I think close to 1,000 people died in that fire. And the reason they died is because the doors were locked from the outside, because that's the concept of a sweatshop, isn't it? You can't go home, you have to work these 24-hour shifts, so on and so forth. Now, everyone was like, well, who was this factory supplying? And to nobody's surprise, it was the likes of Primark and places like that. But it was also the United Colours of Benetton, which is a really high quality brand, Lacoste, really high quality brand, and then there was another high quality brand, I can't remember who it was, I don't want to lie to you. But everyone was like, oh, Primark, no surprise there. And then it was like, oh, and these other high quality brands that are charging, 5 times the price. Oh, well, made by, kids in sweatshops. Yeah, and now they've been set on fire. Not ideal. So that reputation is super important. Apple also fell foul of this because they moved their production over to China, to Chinese factories, and then people, they were trying to like jump out. People were being made to work 48 hours straight, and then they started like jumping out of windows to kill themselves. And then the factory's response to that was to put nets so that to catch people. And then Apple obviously got caught on the news about this, and Apple were like, well, we didn't know. And people were like, well, you should have known. And then you've got the more modern version of that, which is your Shein and your Temus and all those people. There's been loads of kind of reputation-based conversations around them. This is a big consideration. It's not a small one. But again, it's not really highlighted upon in modern news because it's not exciting until it's too late. So this one probably trumps all of these. Okay, the inventory control chart. I've tried my very best on a whiteboard, folks. That last little blue line does go a bit skew with. I apologize. Okay, it's supposed to be very consistent. There are just a few things you need to know about inventory control charts, but they often can be quite intimidating. So we're going to break it down one little bit at a time. Okay. So first of all, we've got days along the bottom. This finishes at 8 days because you can imagine where the 9th day would finish down here with the rest of these. Okay. And this is the units up the side here. So 10 units, 30 units, 70 units. I haven't done all the other labels for the sake of time. So we know that the buffer stock for this business is 10 units because we can see on this line here, this dotted line here, that they never let it go below 10. So they keep 10 units of stock in stock at all times, just in case there's some sort of emergency. And that's not just in time production, that's just a buffer stock. That's what it's called, buffer. So they have this 10 unit buffer that they try to never go below. That's for the super duper emergencies. That's the first thing we need to know. The next thing we need to work out is what is our reorder level. So at what points, because it's not days, it's units, how many units do we let our stock get to before we ring the suppliers and say, hey, can we have some stock? Well, if we have a look here, it would appear to be about 30 units because every time we get to here, a day elapses and then we get our stock back. We get to here, a day elapses, we get our stock back, and we get to here, and bizarrely, that's on the 8th day, not the 9th day. Now, the question that this graph is from tells us that the lead time is 1 day. Now, we probably could have worked that out for ourselves, but if we know the lead time is 1 day, what would we expect to happen at day 9? It would reach here, and then it would zoom back up again, wouldn't it? So 1 day, so 3, 4, 5, we're here, 6, bosh, up we go again. So the lead time is 1 day, the buffer stock is 10 units, and then the reorder level must be 30 units because at 30 units, a day elapses and then we get our stock filled back up. What is the reorder level? How much stock can we expect to come? Well, we keep 10 and it tops up to 70. So the reorder quantity must be 60 units. So when we dip to 30 units, We ring the supplier and we say, can we have 60 units, please? A day elapses, we sell some more, bosh, we get reinvigorated back up to 70. That is an inventory control chart. I can't think of any more pertinent information than that, because this is generally how they look. If you've got any questions or any comments about this, then please put them in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for taking the time with me today. You stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.